This is Dolores Cannon again with the Metaphysical Hour. And we're going again here. Okay, let me give you the toll-free number first, just in case anybody does want to call in. The toll-free number is 877-876-5227. 877-876-5227. And that number is worldwide. You can call in anywhere around the world whenever we're on the air, when we're going out live. What usually happens is when I'm doing these shows, people just don't call in. I guess they get too involved listening, which is all right with me. But in case you do want to call in, that's the number to use, and I think that Don said he will try to patch it through. All right. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is our conference that we had. I did a lot of talking about it before we had it, and I had many of my authors that were the speakers. I had them as guests on this show. And I know we had some very wonderful programs when they were on. But they all came to the conference, and it was really fantastic. The people later, after it was over, came up to us and they said, this was the best conference we've ever attended. And I'm not saying that out of ego, because we didn't know what was going to happen. This was the first conference we've ever done. And everybody says, I don't believe it's the first one you've ever done, because it was so professional. And it was so wonderful with the energy of the entire place, they said, was magical. It was just, I know we could feel it too. Even the vendors, if you can believe this, the vendors told us later, we didn't even care if we sold anything. They said the energy was so magical and just magnetic and wonderful about the whole hotel and the whole group that we brought together there. And they all said it was one of the most spiritual and magical experiences they'd ever had. Now, if they keep telling us this is the best, we're saying now, well, where do we go from here? Because you always want to improve on anything. Well, this is the first one that we have ever done, but then I've attended hundreds and hundreds of conferences everywhere, all over the world, so I know how they're done, and I've helped many other people put them together. And our UFO conference that we have every year, you know, I spoke from there in April. I've been helping with that for 19 years. So we did have the experience of at least knowing how a conference went. It's not exactly like we were starting from absolute zero. Then it can be overwhelming. But we did know how these things were put together. But I do want to say a little bit about the speakers that we had, because this was really wonderful. The keynote speaker was Arun Gandhi, who was the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. And he was a guest on my show, too, last month. And he spoke a lot about his association with his grandfather and what he had learned and all of the experiences. And he had the audience spellbound, because he is a magnificent speaker. Then we had something very special happen with Aaron Abramson. Now, Aaron Abramson has been retired for many years. Back in the 70s especially, and into the 80s, he never wanted to call himself a psychic, but he had learned how to go into trance and look into the Akashic records, very much the way that Edgar Casey did. And he had such wonderful results with this that he was doing sessions for people all over the world. He was very much in demand. And he said during his career with this, he did over 8,000 readings where he looked into the Akashic records and told people about their past lives and about the things that were, how it influenced their life today. So he finally did it so long until he decided to retire. There was also a time in the 80s and early 90s when he was doing the Abramson report. Now, I told them there were a lot of people who still remember him because he was very famous and traveled a lot, and he helped a great deal of people. And when he did the Abramson report, that was the one dealing with earth changes. And so many people may still remember him from that. Anyway, he retired, and a few years ago, I think he said about 3 years ago, he had a stroke. And after that stroke, he lost his speech altogether. He couldn't talk, and that was very discouraging for him because he just felt everything was over. But he has a wonderful wife, Doris, who came to the conference with him. So we had the honor of meeting her also, and she is just a delightful person. They have been married for 56 years, and she's been with him through everything. So she played a main part in getting him to speak again. He had to learn the English language all over again. He said when he first came to this country as a young man, he had to learn English when he came from Norway. He said now he had to learn it all over again. And she used children's books to teach him how to speak again. So when we asked him to come to the conference, because I published his book, he had not done any public speaking or made any appearances for several years, and he was worried about it. But he said he missed this. He missed getting out with the people and the talking and lecturing that he used to do. So he agreed to do it if Doris could be with him on the stage. And I said, certainly, anything you want, we'll let you do it, and just so you come. So he came, and he was really worried because he was worried about his speech and worried about if they'd be able to understand him. He had a lot of things that were going through his mind. So when I made the announcement, he said it was okay. I told everyone that he had had a stroke and had to learn how to speak all over again, and that all he asked was that they be patient with him as he did his talk. It was wonderful because the people were so understanding, and he was able to give a wonderful lecture, and I didn't think he faltered that much at all. And I think it was a surprise to him. It was really a delight. But during the whole conference, we could just see him blossom and change as though he was coming alive again. And he told us later, he said, you saved my life. He said, I really didn't want to go on. I thought my life was over, that I'd never be able to lecture again. I'd never be able to do any of the things he wanted to do again. So he was very discouraged, but he says, coming here and doing this again, he said, you have awakened in me things that I thought were long dead, and now it's all coming back. And you could just see the light come back in his eyes, and he really blossomed and came to life. And he was not the same man who left as the one who came in there. His wife, Doris, was almost crying because she said, you don't know what you've done for him. You've given him back his life. Now, I kept telling him, your career is not over with. Why else would you learn how to speak all over again? You had to go through a great test. Had to go through something. They always say you have to go through the test of fire. We all do this. Every one of us have had something we've had to face. And it usually is something that's very difficult. But I said, why would he have been put to such a test and been able to learn how to speak again? It means that his career is not over with. He has a life ahead of him, and who knows where it's leading. Maybe he'll get back into this whole field of psychic phenomena that he devoted his life to. But this was another wonderful experience that happened there. As I said, the whole conference was magical, and the people that attended could feel it. And it was very real. It was very good. And then we had Father Pat, Father Pat McNamara was also one of my guests last month. He was the Catholic priest for 18 years. And he spoke about, after he got out of the church, and he spoke about the connection between the Catholic Church and spirituality and metaphysics. And he had the people in tears because it was so beautiful. One thing I did like is that he went back to the beginning of the history of the church, where he said, very few people know, now I know it, and I think the people who read my books are the ones who are out there who have listened to the shows know these things. But the average person, and especially the average Catholic, doesn't know that he was telling the history that in the beginning the Catholic Church did believe in reincarnation. They believed in all of these things. It was all part of the teachings. As I've said before, every religion in the world had reincarnation as the basis for their belief system. It was only later that man changed a lot of these things. And he went into the history of how the Catholic Church did believe in reincarnation in the very beginnings of the church. And it was about the 3rd century, I think is when it happened, was whenever they put the Bible together. And that was when all of these teachings were removed and not included in the final Bible. Now, I spoke about this before, but I thought it was much more impressive coming from a former priest. People are going to believe him because they know he's not going to lie about it. And Father Pat is such a wonderful presence to be around him. And what he was speaking about coming back to the religion the way it should have been and the way it was in the beginning, to try to bring that back because we've gotten too far away from it with the dogma and the theology that the church has built around these things, that we need to get back to that, back to those basics. This was what Jesus was really trying to show us. The basics, which are really just based on love. And it was a wonderful experience to have him talking about all those things and about his life when he decided he could no longer stay in the church. And he left. Then he ended up getting married. But the church, the people in the audience, there were some parts that were so beautiful, they were in tears. So here again, it was just such a wonderful experience to put all of these people together. And then we had Dr. O.T. Bonnet. He was a medical doctor for 44 years. And we have published 3 of his books. He is now 81, and it's like he's just starting on a whole new career. Even in his books, he says he never gets sick. He's like me, who has time to get sick. And he has not had any illnesses for many, many years because he discovered that the mind could heal the body. And this is what he was trying to introduce into the medical field when he was a doctor. Of course, he met with great opposition, and the other doctors didn't believe him, and he got in a lot of trouble. But he was a highly respected physician, and he even went as high as, at one point, he was running an entire hospital. So he really was in the thick of the regular medical community. Now, we published 3 of his books, and he spoke on 2 days. He spoke on both subjects. The one book is Reincarnation, The View from Eternity. And he talked about how he used hypnosis way back, even before I started it, because I've been doing it for 40 years. He said he's been doing it for 50 years. And he was making the connection between people's illnesses and the past lives. So sometimes you can't find the answers with what's happening now. And instead of giving the people a lot of drugs, he would use hypnosis and take them into their past lives to find the connection with the illnesses they were having. He kept people from having operations that way, which is what I try to do also. If we can get them before they have surgery, we can find the cause of the problem. And that's what he was doing. And he was using hypnosis, but he had to do it secretly because the medical profession frowns on these kind of things. So when they found out he was doing it, he would have to stop it, or he would go to the person's home and do it there. But he wrote the book, Reincarnation, The View from Eternity, from the standpoint of what he learned. Then the other two books, one of them just came out just as the week we were going to have the conference. We're really pushing to get all of this done just in time, and we didn't know if it was going to work or not. But his other two books, one of them is What I Learned After Medical School, and the second one is Why Healing Happens. And in that he was talking about all the cases and how he had come to the conclusion that you make yourself ill for whatever reason. And I've discovered this also in my work. And if you can make yourself ill, if you create the illness for whatever reason, the mind is so powerful that you can cure yourself. First you have to find out, why did you give yourself the disease or the illness in the first place? Because we set ourselves up for a reason, for whatever if we're getting sick for. There's all kinds of reasons. Once we find that out, which was what he was trying to do by talking to the people, a lot of it went back to their diets, too. He made a lot of, I guess you would say, cures, even though the medical profession doesn't like that term. A lot of it he did just by finding out what kind of foods the people were eating. And this ended up causing a lot of the problems, and he was able to eliminate that by changing their diets. And there were many things like that. There were simple things that the average medical profession and the doctor doesn't think to look at. They want to go into tests, and they want to find something complicated. A lot of times it can be something very simple, and when it's overlooked, it just gets worse and worse. But he showed in the books and in his talks how people create their own illness. And I know I have people telling me the same thing. They say, "What do you mean? I don't want to be sick. I didn't make myself sick." But when you look down to the basics, we do it for whatever reason. And that's what we have to find out. Why do we make ourselves sick? Why do we want to have this experience? What is it trying to teach us? Everything in life is a lesson. What kind of a lesson? Or it may be a test. Something we have to experience and go through. But whatever it is, we have to find out why we have given ourselves that disease or illness. Once we understand that, we do have the power to cure ourselves. And one of the things that OT has tried to do with his clients is to make them understand that every cell in the body is alive. Every cell in the body has consciousness. We don't think of it that way. It's all living. It all has consciousness. And that we can communicate with the cells in our body. And we can tell these cells, this is what we want. We want to have a healthy body. We want to have a body functioning in complete balance and harmony. And it will provide that, because it will do whatever we want it to do. If we want to be sick, it'll say, all right, this is what they want, because it feels it must obey whatever the mind of the body is telling it. So, if you can communicate with the cells of the body and understand they have a consciousness of their own, look at the wonderful things you can do to heal your own body. Because he had people doing this when they had injuries. when they had problems with different parts of their body. He had them concentrating on that part of the body and talking to it. Now that's different than what I do. We have come from the same conclusion but from different directions, because I do it with hypnosis where the person is, their subconscious is speaking to them in trance. But he wants the person to do this deliberately, consciously, speak to the body and speak to the different cells, the different parts of the body, whatever part is having the problem. Now there's one special way to do this, and he gave many examples of his patients who they said they didn't want to do that because it sounded silly. But if he's proven it to work, why not at least give it a try? He had the person speak to that part of their body, and he told them to use the word we. We are getting better. We are, the discomfort is going away. We are experiencing a healthy body. You talk about it as though you're in cooperation with the cells in the body. Our body is healthy. We are feeling better, because they said that way that part will listen and it will understand that the message is coming from a higher authority, I guess would be one way to put it. But if you talk to that part of the body and tell it what you want it to do, using the plural we, as though you're working in conjunction with that part. And he said first these different patients would say that's silly and they wouldn't do it. And they'd come back, they weren't any better, they were getting worse. Then he said, are you doing what I told you to do? He said, well, they changed their diet, like he said. He said, what about talking to your body? Talking to the cells. They said, well, OT, that sounds so silly. I didn't want to do that. And he said, try it. What harm could it do? And when they began doing it, they had almost immediate recovery, because the body would listen and it would respond. By using the word we are feeling better, or whatever it is, we are experiencing less pain, less discomfort. It is going away. We are having wonderful healing take place. You speak to the healing, what do you want to call it? I call them the little army in the body, the ones who the defense system of the body, who go through the body and repair the damages, and they look for things that are not supposed to be there. I like to speak to that part of the body, tell it what a wonderful job it is doing, and how it takes care of the body, and how it makes sure there's nothing in the body that doesn't need to be there, and how it can remove it if it finds anything that does not need to be there. I think if you try some of these methods that OT was suggesting, it doesn't do any harm. You may even come up and be inventive on your own. Find different ways you can talk to it and different things you can say. And you may find a lot of things that you can say to your own body, and just see what the results are. It certainly can't hurt anything. Anyway, this was some of the things that OT was talking about. And he's a gray-haired man with a beard. He gives me the impression of your typical country doctor. And his books are Reincarnation, The View from Eternity, and What I Learned After Medical School, and Why Healing Happened. So we done 3 of his books. And then another one that we had was Christine Ramos. And she just came on board at the last minute because we just published her book, and it also just came out that week. We signed a contract with her, and we did the book, and I thought, well, maybe we can get it out in time for the conference if we really push. And you didn't need a lot more pressure whenever you're trying to put a conference on. But we really pushed at that and get OT's and Christine's book out in time so we could sell it at the conference. And they just came out. Both of them came out just the week we were going to have the conference. So it was really down to the wire. Christine Ramos is a registered nurse, mostly in the obstetric unit. I had her as a guest on my show last month also. But she's an obstetric nurse for, I think, believe it was 10, 15 years. And she also takes on the medical establishment. During the conference, I made a statement of something that just came to me. I said, you know, most of our speakers are rebels. They're the ones who have taken on the establishment as though we're trying to change the status quo, getting people to think for themselves. We're not accepting the way it's been forever and ever, and these different people are trying to make a difference. And so they're rebels, the priest, the doctor, and now Christine. She began thinking about the spirit of the baby in the obstetric ward, the baby that's coming in. And her book, The Journey into Being, is about communicating with your child as a spirit before it's ever born and understanding it as a spirit. Because most of the medical profession see the baby as an unformed, malleable thing, I guess, a being that has no background, it has no memory of anything, that is to be formed, what do I want to say, to be molded into what it is to become. But if you think of the baby as having had, like all of us, many, many, many lives, it is just an old soul coming into an infant body. This is what she was trying to get across. That I have found the same thing, that the spirit that is to be the baby makes a decision which parents it will have, what environment it will be born into, what type of a culture, what type of race, because it's trying to set up the conditions for its next life. And it already has communicating on the different levels with the parents, and they know they are to be the parents. She talked about several examples, even in her own life, where they had dreams that the baby was coming, and the little girl, the little boy, whatever it was communicating with them before they were born, telling them, I'm coming into your life. I've decided to make this journey. Many times there were cases when the woman didn't even think she could be pregnant, could get pregnant, and they had these dreams about these babies, and they were born. But the baby does choose, the spirit does choose the baby, the parents, the environment. Therefore, it's much more knowledgeable than we could ever give it credit. But like all of us, when it comes into the body, the memory is erased. It comes in, like I say, with the blinders on. The veil goes down. When you die, the veil is lifted. And then all truth and all knowledge is again revealed. But when you come in, the veil is put back in place, the blinders are in place, and you don't realize all the things you've done and the reasons why you've come into this life. I asked one time in my work, I said, wouldn't it be easier if we knew why we were coming in? We knew the connections we had with our parents, the past life connections. If we knew the agreements we had made, wouldn't that make it easier? And I was told no, because it wouldn't be a test if you knew the answers. That's the whole thing. This is a school. Life is a school. Everything is lessons. You can't go on to the next lesson until you pass the grade that you're in. And so it's tests that we have to go through, tests and lessons. And that's what the baby comes in knowing that. I've had some people, when I've taken them through the birth experience, they have already gone through the spirit side, and they've decided what they're going to do. They've made the agreements with the people they're going to be associated with to work out whatever karma, whatever things they hope to accomplish in this life. They've got it all set, their nice little plan. And I've taken them through the birth experience, and they're saying, I gotta remember, I gotta remember, I gotta remember. But then, when they get here, they're born, then they'll say, I don't remember very much, because it is taken away as soon as they have fully integrated into the physical body, and they are now on Earth and living in a physical body. All of those memories are taken away. But she talks about how people should remember this and get to know this, that the baby is foremost a spirit. It is foremost a spirit coming into a body, and that it does choose all of this. And she goes into lots of things, of the reasons that things happen. One thing I think she was very important that she brought up was that she didn't think doctors should induce labor. And she found it does cause a lot of problems in the obstetrics ward. All kinds of physical problems because you're trying to take over the body and make the body do something that you want it to do when the body is functioning on its own. And she said the doctors don't really know what causes the baby to be born. And she has found it's the baby itself that initiates the labor pains when it knows it's time to come into the world. It knows exactly when it's supposed to come in. And for the doctor or the patient to try to take this over and to rush it and change it causes more problems. Now, there are times when they have to be because there are medical problems, but as a rule, just a natural birth, it doesn't need to be induced or to be changed or speeded up because the baby knows when it's supposed to come in. And these are things that she talked about that I think it was very valuable. And she goes a lot into treating the baby and the young child as a spirit. And it's a new way of looking at it. And we're going to be trying to get these books into the offices of obstetrics and also midwives. We think the midwives will be very interested in passing this information on to their clients. And I've had some chiropractors say they thought this would be very interesting also. So that is mostly her book. Is called A Journey into Being, and it's Christine Ramos. And she's totally new at this. This was her first conference, her first lecture. And when I did the radio show last week, it was her first radio show. So she was getting very nervous and kind of new at it all, but she's going to be fine as we go through this with her. And then we had Justine Alessi, who I had on my show last month also. Justine is a master tarot reader. And I know most people say, lots of people out there who read the tarot. But we have found Justine to be so accurate. She has told many of the members of my own family things that she could not possibly have known, and predicted things that have come true immediately. So she has a remarkable ability to read the cards and to convey this to the client. Now, but she has developed her own method. She said after doing this for about 30 years, she began to find out different meanings from the cards than the average tarot reader was finding. And that's why she wrote her own book about her own method. And her book is called The Rebirth of the Oracle. This brings the tarot into the modern time Because as a lot of you know, the tarot goes way, way back to the Egyptian times and beyond. It's been around a long, long time. And a lot of the other books are still focusing on the old interpretations of the cards, the old meanings of the cards. But that now is becoming outdated, because whenever you're trying to read the cards with the old meanings, how can you interpret that for now? So what she has done in her book is to show people how they can read the cards and how it applies to what's happening in their life right now in the 21st century, and how we can apply it to the lifestyles we're having now. And she is also going to be giving classes to teach this, and we're going to be helping her with this, to start setting up some classes in various cities so that she can show people this new method of doing the tarot. It's very effective. So there was a whole lot more about her also. I'm almost through with all these speakers anyway. Okay. But then the last one we had was Claire Doyle Ballant, and I brought her down from Canada. She had to come the farthest, and she has written a small book called Luck Doesn't Happen by Chance. And that book is a combination of astrology and numerology. It's a fun book. A book that you can just pick up and go over the instructions, and you can find out your lucky numbers. And she doesn't mean these numbers should be used just for gambling. She means in your everyday life, there are certain numbers that you should take into consideration. Like when buying a house, the address is going to be, when buying a car, the license plate. There's certain days you should not do things on, and some days that would be the very best days to do things on. And this book is very simple, very easy to read, and you can take the calendar, take the month of the calendar, and figure out the days during that month, which would be the best days for you to do things. You know, being human, we don't always stick to that, do we? But, you know, things can change because our lives are not set in stone. But anyway, that is what her book is about, and it's called Luck Doesn't Happen by Chance. So we have a great deal of very wonderful authors, and these are only some of them. We have about 20 different authors now, and these are the ones we had come to the conference. And if you go on my website, you'll be able to find out about the other authors whose books we publish. And we have more that'll be coming out all the time. Our website, well, I'll tell it to you now. I usually tell it at the end of the show, but the website, the name of my company is Ozark Mountain Publishing. So we abbreviate that in the website. So it's OZARKMT.com. Or if you're overseas, it's OZARKMT.com. Ozark Mountain Publishing. And we are continuing to put out more and more books. Of course, I'm writing more and more books all the time. Everybody says, when is your next one coming out? I am still working on the Convoluted Universe series. I have the 2 books that I've written on those, and they're big books. And so I now have enough information to do Convoluted Universe Book 3. And that's the one I'll be focusing on now that the conference is over and things will start to return to normal, if they ever do. I keep saying when things slow down, but the way our life and our company and everything is growing by tremendous leaps and bounds, I don't think it's ever going to slow down and return to so-called normal. But I do promise my readers I am going to work on Convoluted 3, and I will focus on that as much as I can in the months ahead so we can get that out, because I'm still getting a great deal of information that comes from all of my clients that I work with. So my information is still coming. It's not dying down. Now, next week, I will be going to INES next weekend. I'll be broadcasting from there. INES is the International New Age Trade Show. This is going to be held in Denver. We went to the one in, I think it was in February. It was held in Orlando, Florida, and we attended that one. We used to have booths at these fairs, but now, because of the generosity of the New Leaf distributors and our own distributor, Book World, we are doing our book signings and meeting the people at their booth, and they are promoting our books through their booth. So it's easier on us anyway, especially financially it is. We used to have a booth at the BEA, which is the booksellers, the Book Expo, the big one. And now that one is, we've been doing to that we were going 10, 12 years to that, and we had a booth every time until this last year. If you've ever gone to that, it is enormous. It goes on for 3 days, and it takes 3 days to be able to see all of the booths and all that's going on there, because it's books published by every type of publisher you can think of in the United States, and they even have a foreign part. All kinds of books from every subject you can think of. So they're sprinkled all over the place. Now, at these book fairs, this is where the bookstores send their buyers to. So these are very important for the industry. So the only ones allowed into the BEA, the Bookseller Book Expo, is the ones that have the book buyers for the bookstores and the authors and publishers. The average public is not allowed in there. So for years we had our own booth there. But there, I believe, we got lost in the shuffle, because ours are in the New Age metaphysical field. And by going to those fairs, I feel we kind of got swallowed up by all of the huge ones. You know what I mean by the huge book publishers that have, they put out all the paperbacks and all these different mainstreams. That this last year, we finally decided to focus on the New Age trade shows. And we've been going to that also for about 10 years, whenever they first began. And when they first started, they were small, because they were focusing on New Age and metaphysical, and it had never been done before. And I can remember we were there was more people, exhibitors, than there were buyers. But now, when I went in Orlando, they're having 2 a year now instead of just one in Denver and one in Florida. And it was huge, and I said, boy, what a change. The first few years, there was just very few people coming. They had to get the attention, they had to get started. Well, now the New Age book industry is growing by leaps and bounds, and it is getting so big that there's no problem anymore of attracting people. Now, in Europe, especially in England, they don't like the term New Age. It has rather a negative connotation, especially in England, because they associate the New Agers with people like gypsies, who more or less travel from place to place, live in little caravans, and they get a bad reputation. So they don't like to use that term. So in some of these countries, they use the term body, mind, spirit when they're referring to this type of material, these type of books. And they have the body, mind, spirit expos that I've spoken at some of those. And when they're having the book fairs in London and Frankfurt and all the different countries over there, they will have the body, mind, spirit sections. But here we still tend to refer to them as New Age or metaphysical bookstores and the books. So this is the International New Age Trade Show. It's going to be in Denver. So I'm going down there, and I'll be down there next weekend in Denver at the Merchandise Mart, and it's Friday. I'm going Friday, but it's going to be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And we're going to have some of our authors there signing their books, the same ones I was just speaking about. Dr. Bonnet is going to be there to sign his 3 books. Christine Ramos the nurse, is going to be there to sign hers. And Justine Alessi, the tarot reader, is going to be there because they say she is the life of the party. She's gone now to 3 of these, and they always want her to come back because she gives small readings to everyone who comes up to talk to her, all of the book buyers, and she's an entertainer. She can go into the crowd and tell everyone what card they are and tell them about themselves without knowing anything about them. So naturally, she's going. They requested her to come especially so that she can entertain. So she's been the last 3 times. And I'll be there also. I'll be signing my latest book, The Convoluted Universe, Book 2. So we'll be there to talk to people. And I was just talking to Don Newsom, who is the one who runs the blogging service, the BBS Radio. And he said, why don't we have a conversation? I said, well, I'm going to be down there next Friday, and I don't have a guest scheduled, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. So next weekend, I think we'll be having a conversation, me and Don, on the radio. Then I guess I'll get back to normal, whatever normal is, having guests. I really want to get back to talking about my books, because I've never really finished all of that. But I have so much material that I can do several-hour shows just covering the material in my books. I stopped whenever I began having guests come on. But in the very beginning, when I started doing the shows, I spoke about the Jesus books, especially around Christmas time, and I spoke about the books I wrote about life after death. And I really didn't go any further than that. But I have the 3 Nostradamus books on the Nostradamus prophecies that are considered to be the most accurate interpretation ever written. And the story behind that is absolutely remarkable because it had never been done before, and it was time travel. So I'm going to be talking about how that came about and how the prophecies, how they are coming true, and how many have come true since the 1980s when the books were first published. And I'll be going into those prophecies. I speak on those kind of things when I do lectures all over the world. They sometimes want me to lecture on the prophecies for 3 days in a row because there is so much material. So that's something I'll be doing in the future. I'll be taking a few Fridays to go into the story of how it happened and into the prophecies. This would be as good a time as any to bring this up before we have to sign off. When we were doing the Nostradamus prophecies, and I'm not going to go into how it happened because it was definitely time travel, we were communicating with Nostradamus while he's alive, living in France in the 1500s, while he is writing the prophecies. It is not speaking to the dead. He said he was very emphatic about that. You are not speaking to the dead. I'm not a spirit floating around out here. It's not a seance. It is not channeling. It was direct communication with Nostradamus while he was alive, living in France, in the process of writing the prophecies. And we'll talk about how this happened and how the connection was made. But he was so emphatic about this that he said he didn't want to know his own future. He didn't even want to know how he was going to die. So we were communicating with a living person. That's why it is time travel. But the reason I wanted to bring this one part up was he gave us instructions how to locate him. And this is what I used through all of the people that we worked with while putting the 3 volumes of Conversations with Nostradamus together. He gave me the instructions, and he also gave me a test to perform. So I would always know I was speaking to him, no matter who I worked with. This I always called the test quatrain. The amazing thing was, it was a quatrain. It was the very first quatrain I tried whenever we were doing the interpretation. And no one in any of the other books had ever interpreted this quatrain in the way that he gave it to us. I'll be going more into that when I cover this subject further. But the quatrain dealt with the discovery of hidden documents, especially dealing with religion, with lost knowledge. And he said those would begin to come back to us. And this was in the end of the 1980s whenever we were first doing this. And this was a very important quatrain because he said it was the discovery of lost knowledge and lost information, especially dealing with religious beliefs and with knowledge that would change the way people thought once it was delivered and gotten out there. I may not be saying that correctly. But every person that I gave this quatrain as a test, I would always read it to them, and if they all gave me the same meaning, the same definition, I would know I was actually communicating with him. And they all said that meant the same thing. They worded it differently, but it all had to do with the discovery of hidden knowledge, hidden documents, rather like the Nag Hammadi documents that were found in Egypt. It's along the same line, and this is what he said. The reason I bring this up, because of the new discovery of the Judas Gospel that just came out. And of course, the church is denying it. They're all saying it's a forgery, it's a fake. There was a documentary on the National Geographic Channel about the discovery of this hidden gospel, these old parchments, and how they've been tested and gone over now for 20 years trying to test their authenticity. The Judas Gospel. Well, it's strange that he was telling us this was going to be discovered soon. That was in the 1980s. Well, to him, soon can mean anything, because he's always saying all of these prophecies are going to happen very quickly. He said that it'll happen in our lifetime anyway. But on the National Geographic Channel, they talked about the discovery of this gospel in the end of the 80s, which was about the time that he was communicating and telling us that it would be found. It was not made public until recently, because they put it through so many tests and so much rigorous examination trying to determine the age of it and the authenticity. So it has just now come to light. And I think that's amazing. One of the prophecies he did tell us about this at the end of the 80s, and now it is happening at the time that he calls the time of troubles, when everything is supposed to be coming to light. But it's all fitting in. It's all really wonderful the way it is happening. And that, I think, is important, because that does show that the time now for the information to come back, it's time for people to start thinking for themselves. On the National Geographic, they said the church was saying it was a forgery, it was a fake. And they said, no, it has been authenticated to date back to the 3rd century. And they said, well, then it was faked then. Well, they say that, they are cutting their own throat. because everything in the Bible dates from the 3rd century. Now, how do they decide this is true and this one is not? This is authentic and this one is a forgery. You can't separate it that way. But I have done regressions to those time periods, and I have worked with someone who gave me more information about Judas also, and I think what I learned fits in exactly with what is coming to light right now. So I'm telling people to think for themselves. I think that's what the time is now, to start thinking for yourself. Ask questions. Make up your own minds. Don't give your power away to anyone. Do lots of reading, ask lots of questions, then decide what it is you're going to believe. Make up your own mind. Your truth may not be my truth, but it will be what you decide from your own belief system and what you have discovered. This is important, I think, that you focus on these things. You think for yourself. We're no longer to be led around in this time right now of awakening. We're no longer to be led around by someone else. Don't give your power away to anyone. Think for yourself. Right? So I think, again, the hour has gone very quickly. I always wonder what I'm going to talk about during the hour. It seems to take care of itself, though. Well, next week I'll be talking to you from the New Age Trade Show in Denver. And before I sign off, I do again want to give our website where you can find about all the books, and you can order from the website if you want to. The website is ozarkmountain.com, OZARKMT.com. And our 800 number is 1-800-935-0045. 1-800-935-0045. All right, good night for now.
If you enjoyed the show, check out more of our other videos and be sure to subscribe and click the like button. Thank you for listening to the Metaphysical Hour with Dolores Cannon.